Hi, I'm here with Dimitri Masin. He is the CEO of Gradient Labs, and we're also joined by Maya Mason, who may be in and out of frame. So first question, you joined a company that was very small at the time called Monzo. Can you tell me a little bit about why you joined them and what it ended up becoming?
Yeah. Well, that's actually a very long story, but I'm going to try to keep it short, actually. I started before Monzo at a different startup called Osper. Osper was like a debit card product for kids, like more of an educational product.
Okay.
And I think at some point, while working at Osper, I realized a thing that every one of those people who were working with me there had a Monzo card. It's like, wait a second, we have actually a debit card as well as our own product, but everyone else uses something else. And I really became excited about this company, Monzo. Back then, it was literally just in a beta stage. They had like 2,000 customers or so. And you need to go to physical events to actually get a card.
Wow.
But they were gathering a really big following because the product was amazing. You just wanted to use it every day. And that's how I typically have chosen my companies to work for, Google before, or Monzo, Osper. I just typically go to places where I'm really keen user of the product and really excited about the product.
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up there. But I was lucky. I mean, it's not like I could foresee how successful Monzo will become. I was just betting on a really good product and kind of bet on the right horse, if you wish.
Well, I think starting with something that's really usable and that you yourself like to use is a great place to start when it comes to that. Can you talk a little bit about, what your role was there and how you met your co-founders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined probably as one of the first 30 people there. The role was data. That's literally how it is, right?
Data.
So when you join a company that small, you can make it your own, right?
Yeah.
And so I was reporting back then to Jonas, who hired me. Jonas was co-founder and CTO. And he essentially, like, the brief was, just make it work. just like make it yours, make sure that we as Monzo get the most value out of all the kind of large amounts of data that Monzo holds. And I was very lucky that he gave me that opportunity and responsibility to really shape the role however I wanted. And towards the end, I stayed there 7 years. And towards the end, I was essentially managing all things machine learning, data platform, data science, data analytics, anything with data in it, I guess. I was managing kind of and building out that capability throughout the whole bank. Yeah.
And so Neil told the version of the story how he met you over a beer.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like and how you knew that he was the right person to hire?
When I met Neil, I was hiring Neil as the very first machine learning engineer into the team. We didn't have any capability back then, so we purely hired data analysts or data scientists before that. And really, I wanted to have a person who kind of deeply personalized experience for Monzo customers and would help us to figure out how to use those vast amounts of data that we're starting to gather kind of in a more large-scale way where you kind of personalize experience for customers, maybe automate some customer support experience. Actually, that was one of the first projects that he did back in the day when we hired him. So you see the connection to Gradient Labs here. But yeah, it was very clear, to be honest, that he is the right person because he was kind of, it felt to me in that conversation that I could learn a lot of stuff from him that I myself cannot do. And that's what I typically look for when I hire people, especially in the leadership team, such that I don't need to tell them what to do, but they can actually tell me what needs to get done. Yeah. And Neil was one of those people. He had lots of experience, very technical, and also just a great human in general.
Yeah, really, he really is. And Denai is as well. So essentially, you hired Neil hired Denai, and you built out this amazing set of product solutions, ultimately data products at Monzo. Is that right?
Yes.
Why did you decide to start Gradient Labs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me first tell you an anecdote.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was working at the previous company, Osper, I was actually saying to to one of the product manager who was my friend there, Sile, I was saying something like along the lines, Sile, I think we'll never found our own companies. We're just too rational. You need to be a bit delusional as a founder just to really deeply believe into something that's going to be in the future, but is not there right now. And the funny thing is, Sile now runs one of the most successful HR tech companies in London called MetaView, and I'm obviously running Gradient Labs. But I don't think I became delusional. I think that's not what happened to become a founder. I think something else has happened. I think after 7 years at Monzo, it just became the rational next thing to do.
Yeah.
In a way, because we realized, oh my God, it's like once in a lifetime opportunity where you can build and shape the future in a very kind of large way. And we are at the forefront of that technology, i.e. kind of at the intersection of ML and AI, but also are deep domain experts in operations, but also kind of understand the regulatory landscape of particular set of companies. And so, and also maybe on top of that, even more to say, we had easy access to capital because we kind of knew the original founders and were very well connected, and kind of access to talent pool as well. So in a way, we essentially concluded, like, if not now, they're never going to be such a good opportunity.
It became something that you couldn't
it's like,
do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You almost like, you can't do it. So it became the rational thing. So in a way, I still maybe not delusional enough. I should be probably a bit more delusional, but it became the rational, logical thing to do.
No, I think it's really incredible that all three of you didn't necessarily have this deep drive to be an entrepreneur for entrepreneurship's sake, but rather we're really excited by the problems that you work on and saw this opportunity to do something bigger with it. Like, I think that is such a strong foundation for a company, and often, especially with how many new startups there are, may not always be the case.
Yeah.
So I think it's
for
a
sure. Like,
differentiator.
I'm very, very grateful that I don't need to kind of to deal or to think it too much about how do you hire people, how do you manage people. It's like all of those things that you need to kind of figure out as a fresh grad if you build a company, they're just like really difficult things that take a long time to learn to do well. Like for us, they don't kind of matter as much because we kind of done this before.
And so you knew great talent already.
Yeah, exactly. And so we can purely focus on like, how do we actually solve the problem and deliver an amazing solution out there, rather than kind of obsessing about, how do I actually hire people? How do we manage them?
Yeah, absolutely. And those they're ultimately they're soft skills, but they're so important and can take a really long time to learn. And like, I think when I was earlier in my career, I also discounted the value of that experience and didn't understand how much that compounds over your career. So it's been amazing to see how everyone really fits together, and there's such an established way of working that works so well. And that was actually one of my questions. My next questions for you was, what do you feel is one of our differentiators in terms of not just our technology, but our culture? Yeah,
our culture. That's a good question, because I'm currently thinking about it a lot, because we are kind of at a crossroads as a company, right? So we are about 30 people now. Another 10 people are about to join. And so that's kind of typically the time where you can still mold the culture much easier than when you're 200 people.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm spend a lot of time thinking about it. I think some of the things that we definitely don't need to come up with, because they were there from the beginning, are the ones that we actually should kind of carry forward, but maybe just formalize them a little bit. And I think some of those things is like this deep obsession about quality and domain expertise, because I believe that's what ultimately makes our product successful, right? So we deeply understand the customers that we are working with, what types of problems they're dealing with, how they operate. And that's where we spent a lot of time actually in experience gathering. Like, for example, when we worked at Monzo and we were launching kind of innovative ML products, it actually took a lot of zigzag to figure out how to convince the regulator that it's fine, right? Because you're ultimately building something new. And so coming back to Gradient Labs, we don't need to do the zigzag. So we actually know how this domain knowledge needs to be incorporated into the product. And so we kind of keep obsessing about also hiring people who understand the space well, especially on the product side and the AI delivery side. And so this kind of depth and obsession with quality, I think, is probably one of the core things that I would say differentiate us, but also now have created a product that is truly amazing and different, kind of performing much better than anyone else's. That's one thing. Another thing that's very, very important to me personally throughout my career and here at Gradient Labs as well is kind of, I would call it a high bar of execution, or like whenever you do something, or I think you call it excellence, right? I call it high bar. But it's like, no matter what you do, there's like, you can do it in a sloppy way and it's like, okay, customer writes to you and then you reply a day later. Or you can literally be on top of all the things you do and just try to deliver everything at a much higher standard and have people who kind of challenge each other to do things better the next time.
Yeah.
So there's this thing that I'm talking to the company about, that we should treat POCs as a rocket launch rather than throwing a pebble stone on the water which never takes off, right? So it's like, and this mentality of getting things perfect and really kind of treating it as a big thing and like letting it fly is kind of, for me, about a very, very high bar of quality. And then lastly, obviously pace. I think in particular in today's landscape where things are changing like on a monthly basis, where you can literally have a technology in 4 or 5 months time which will require you to reinvent your business, you kind of need to be a lot more nimble, and you need to be open to the fact that, okay, maybe what you have built, you need to scrap that and kind of pivot a little bit. I think it wasn't as much previously. I mean, pace was always important, right? So kind of executing towards something, but now you kind of need to also be flexible and accept sometimes like, oh shit, maybe like that thing became obsolete that we built, and kind of still rethink and redo things, but still run incredibly fast because that's the only way to survive right now.
And speech to text, just to get a little bit specific, is an example of that. Maybe not something we experience, but other people in our space experience with those models getting significantly better. And is that something that we've encountered, or is there another specific example where we've ended up going with something newer because it was just fundamentally better?
In our case, we were actually quite lucky. So from the beginning, we had a fairly clear big vision, and so far everything we have built, we didn't need to kind of replace with like every time the new ChatGPT version or Anthropic version, Claude models came out, we could improve our product, but it never became obsolete in a large way.
Right.
And so, because every time when we were building something, we were asking ourselves the question like, what if next month there's a super smart, intelligent model available that it kind of performs on a human level?
Right.
What would be the things that will become obsolete?
Right.
And so we had always this question on our minds, and kind of were building with that in mind, that things will be much better in 6 months. And so it was never just like a thin layer GPT wrapper where you just write a prompt and so, because that's the type of stuff that can be obsolete, right? Yeah. But in our case, none of the system elements were actually down or not that simple. So.
And it goes back to the domain expertise as well, which being really critical.
Maybe just to add on this, I think that's the key point, right? So it's like where previously you would build SaaS applications to augment experts. So you would have experts in a field and they would use some sort of, project management tools and somehow use their domain knowledge and kind of help their workflow. The new style of applications in the AI space essentially incorporate the domain knowledge in them, right? So they're not generic products that helps experts, they are the experts. Right. Like in our case, it's like a customer support agent expert.
Right.
And the way our business will evolve is that we kind of incorporate more and more domain knowledge and expertise into that within the fraud domain, money laundering domain, and so on.
Yeah. And I was speaking to Denai about how it's, part of our philosophy is what would a human do, and making sure we hit that bar. But similarly to it's striking me how similar or how much our culture actually has fed into the product. Because similarly to, this notion of having this really high bar and ultimately like being the best, it's not about learning from any human, but actually the best human. Yeah. And so what does the best human do in this situation, and how do we make sure we're doing what that is and not just, it's a human-like response?
Yeah. 100%. I think what I keep saying to the team is that even though right now we win 100% of our POCs, I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of the quality, right? So it's like, yes, okay, it is working in many cases better than the best human. But if you look at customer interactions and you envision like what would be the most amazing path to journey for this particular problem, we are very, very far away from that imagined state. And so that's for me as an indicator. It's like, okay, even though we might have very, very high quality product, there's still so much room to go.
Right.
And if it's not us, somebody will.
Right.
And I would go with their product. So I think that's why our challenge is like, even if there's nobody better than us, we shouldn't be caring about those competitors too much. We should kind of
compete against ourselves.
Like a true Norse, like not a competitor Norse, but a true Norse of like what is truly amazing looks like and what is the gap between that and that.
And I think it's really cool because it really is something that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the technologies that are being built are okay, let's take this and make it a little bit better or change this thing. But what you're describing, this like true north of a new customer experience, really doesn't exist yet.
Yes.
And that's very exciting.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. So talking just a little bit about our customer. So these are VPs of products, VPs of operations. They're evaluating a lot of different technology right now, and a lot of their boards are telling them they have to do something with AI. I'm curious what your take is on the build versus buy dilemma.
Yeah. I think you kind of just need to go with the flow, is my attitude. Because most companies will want to build because they consider it such a fundamental technology, right? It's like such a fundamental capability that you need to have internally. And I kind of agree with that, right? Because generative AI has such wide scope of applications. So for me, it's not about convincing companies to build or to buy. For me, the argument that I'm usually making to them is like, you need to build. But the question is, out of the 100 things that you could build, and what should you be actually building with your kind of maybe, 20 people or 30 people, or however you want to deploy on those. And so that is the most important questions that companies, I think, should ask ourselves, like where are we uniquely positioned to build something that we can't potentially easily buy from somebody else. In our space in particular, for customer support and customer operations, because you already have such mature products that deliver at such a high quality, the problem there becomes that even if you decide to build and that's the highest opportunity area for you, it actually will take you 2 years. 2 years to get even close to that type of quality. But obviously those companies who specialize in those, they keep running, right? So they will run circles around you and they invest millions in that. So yeah, the question I guess becomes like, what do you actually want? If you want amazing quality and very, very fast time to value, then you should probably buy in certain spaces, which are mature. But if the problem is unique to you, then you should probably build, and that's where you're gonna get unique value.
Yeah, I think that's hopefully very clarifying for people. But if they've decided that they've gone through this build process, they've figured out some unique things that they do want to spend their engineering resources on, and have decided as it comes to automating customer support, they do want to buy a vendor. How do you suggest that they evaluate those vendors?
Yeah, well, that's the thing with AI products, or the problem with AI products. You can't just evaluate them very easily on a piece of paper. Unfortunately, it would be nice, and that's something that we're trying to think about and resolve, because that's how you would previously buy software, right? So you kind of okay, does it meet this criteria, and so on. With AI, you kind of need to experience it. You need to see how much your customers will love it, because there's a huge difference between deploying an okay or mediocre AI agents and kind of which will result in 60% customer satisfaction score versus something that will yield 90% CSAT score. And the difference you unfortunately can't see on paper. You also can't see if you just chat to it. You will only see it once you have the live conversations going. And that's what makes buying AI products super hard, is because it's just like a lot of it is experiencing it, but that costs a lot of effort to actually put it into production.
Right. And then the other way that customers can evaluate is by doing bake-offs of one vendor against another. So, you've mentioned that that's actually really fosters a nice competitive culture internally. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I use it always as a rallying point for us to do an excellent job, right? So it's like, those are the points that kind of bond the team together and which require you to think bigger and at a higher quality bar. Because if you're just delivering without a bake-off, then it's just okay, you're just delivering existing product and you kind of, there's no other choice for that customer. Hopefully it will work. Yeah. But if you're in a bake-off situation, you clearly want to win and you kind of do everything you possibly can. And that fosters this kind of high standard and pace culture. But also what it also does is it creates those really big supporters of the brand, because if you can make it amazing, like mind-blowingly amazing for the customers, like in 6 weeks you have implemented something, it has 80 or 90% CSAT, 50% automation rate, customers are typically mind-blown by that, right? And this is what creates customer advocates as well, which is super, super important and go-to-market.
Yeah. I wonder how we could take the energy of a bake-off and apply it even when there's not a bake-off. Yeah.
Well, maybe you can tell me now that you have joined us, Emma. We're going to do that as well.
Just that hustle and that standard, having that apply across everything we do. So going a little bit back to culture, there was one more question I wanted to ask you, which is just, is there anything that, obviously we've talked about you have experience hiring people, building a massive organization actually, but is there anything this time around founding a business from the ground up that has surprised you?
Yeah. I mean, maybe not surprised, but there's certainly lots of things that you need to learn, right? So it's like, okay, yeah, I've hired people before, built teams before, but this whole sales thing is just right. So I'm coming obviously from a technical background, and have been a data scientist and kind of before, and was coding, analyzing data, and now it's like all about actually telling stories to people and meeting with customers, making things work for them, pitching your vision. So I think that's kind of big adaptation for me, but I really enjoy that part. It kind of what really gives me energy because you have those rare moments where somebody's super, super excited about your product or how it works, and that gives you kind of the energy to go for the next month.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it is.
I think not everyone finds it fun. I find it really fun.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And having people have the light bulb moment in their head that your solution would be great for them, and you're so excited and proud of what you've built, and to see people feel the same way about it is amazing.
No, absolutely.
And then, like, kind of on the same idea of, what surprised you about the business, I'm curious if there are any bets that you made early on that other people didn't believe in or felt that wasn't the right call, but it ended up being the right call. And it might not be here, but throughout your career.
Yeah. No, I think Gradient Lab's actually a good example. So the way we started the business, right? So the core learning observation was that everything in an enterprise, in custom operations in particular, is based off SOPs or standard operating procedures. That's how businesses have learned to scale their custom operations, right? And so they write those plain English guidances and hire more and more humans to execute those. And so the core idea behind Gradient Labs was to be able to build something that can execute on those procedures like a human would. But this something, we didn't give it a name, but essentially like a year later, AI agents became a very, very, very big buzz. Right. But what we started building was essentially that thing, right? We just never called it AI agents. And so it's like, okay, turns out we've built AI agents, but we kind of started it obviously kind of way before that. Because it was just made logical sense, right? So that's what you needed to create a lot of value.
Yeah.
And then obviously we have like a very own take and implementation on that, because we don't let customers build their like army of agents on a low level and write code. We're essentially giving them a brain, which is central and the same for every single customer, and where we guarantee that it has certain kind of intellectual capacity.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And then the other thing actually, that was a year later, vertical AI. It was like when we were starting, it was not a thing, right? But back then it was very, very clear to us that ultimately by building AI applications, what you do, you embed a lot of domain knowledge in them, because what you're automating is work. So you're not building just a generic tool that anyone can use. You are actually building experts. And so again, without like when we actually did the last fundraising, I was describing our mode, or like our unique differentiators. Like, look, we understand this space very, very deeply. And therefore we could build an amazing product. But when we did the last fundraising round a year ago, so it's like, doesn't matter, does it not matter? And this time around, when I talk to investors now, and they're like, oh, over the last year, we've learned that domain experience really, really matters.
You've learned.
It's like,
we knew.
Yeah, it's like, now it is, this vertical AI is like a whole buzzword, right?
Yeah.
But like, if you have really, really deep in that space, it was very, very clear from the beginning that the domain knowledge is a very important element, and you can obviously overcome that. But in certain areas like finance, where you can spend 5 years in a company and still not understand what those things are that banks do, like it's just much harder to acquire that once you start running and building a startup, right?
And having not had firsthand experience of it, like our founding
you
team
can
and many
still
of our
do
engineers
that.
have.
It doesn't mean that you can't acquire this domain knowledge, but it's much harder because maybe you need to hire people who need to do that for you. So you can't do that as a founder anymore. Right. But it just enables you to make very different, higher quality judgments, I think.
Make better decisions faster, ultimately. Exactly. Okay, well, Dimitri, thank you so much. I have one final question, which is just, what are you most excited for with the business next?
Most excited with it. I think, to be honest, when I look at our product, right? So I think it works phenomenally well with the current customers. But really, if you look at where we got started and this kind of vision of providing almost like an operating system for any types of custom operations, if I honestly look at this, it's like, okay, we're still quite far away from actually being close to that vision. And so I'm really, really excited to see how the different elements of that vision now starting to come up together. So we started with reactive support. Now we have added outbound conversations and voice, and now we're gonna add the back office operations. And now all of a sudden those things coming together and becomes like a true custom operations platform,
right,
where you can handle customer experiences in like 360 degrees. And that's what we're ultimately excited about. We're still far away from that, but I see already things coming together for that vision, and that makes me incredibly excited.
Amazing. Well, Dimitri, thank you so much.